And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Daniel Rekshan, dreamworker and hypnotist whose research focuses on the intersection of lucid dreaming, technology, and ET contact. Daniel, thanks for joining me and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Daniel, how did you get into all this stuff?
By way of experience, so I am a longtime experiencer of powerful dream states that veer towards extraordinary. So I look to a lot of like ET, UFO narratives to make sense of them. And my experiences start when I was a kid and have kept going. And so I've been using lucid dreaming to explore those different states and encounters throughout all of my life. And about, I guess, when COVID happened, right, I reviewed my life and said, where do I need to go for the next phase if everything's changing? And so it was really deeply into the exploration of dreams and encounters with these otherworldly beings that lead to creativity and powerful experiences of transformation and insight about ourselves. So that's how I got started, my direct experience.
So does all your contact take place during dreaming?
No, actually. So that's a really interesting thing. I'll often say that contact is dreamlike, and I will often use DreamWorks to understand that contact. Some of the time I will see like UFOs. I did the CE5 experience, and I saw things respond. I would do experiments that are sort of like spiritualist seances sort of thing. So that's in the waking time. I do trance work. It's all dreamlike in some way, shape, or form. I've never had an alien come out of a nuts and bolts craft and do things to me, but I've had things that feel like telepathic overwhelm, right? Entities coming and speaking to me and leaving imprints on my body, let's say, and things like that. So it's veering between the boundary of waking and dreaming. And that's actually where a lot of the experiences I have come is when I go to sleep or I wake up, there's a phase between dreaming and waking called hypnagogia or hypnopompia. And that's where a lot of encounters and things like that occur. So I use that state and I use lucid dreaming practices to explore what's possible in that in-between state.
If there are skeptics out there that are saying, well, you're just dreaming, how do you answer them?
Yeah, I talk about the understanding we have about dreaming, and it gets really kind of complex because I like reading a lot of books about this sort of thing. But really, it comes to our understanding about what dreams and reality are. So oftentimes people go, well, that encounter you had at night, that involved sleep paralysis, that involved a false awakening scenario. You may have never actually seen that light in the sky. Maybe you dreamed it. Maybe it's all just a dream and not real. And so then people often would say, well, actually, there's evidence of something happening. There's a UFO that was reported by someone else, or there's a mark on the body. So it must be real and not a dream. So we approach oftentimes this topic going, it's either a dream or it's real. And so I point to all of the rich literature, all of the rich traditions from cultures outside of the Western kind of material mindset, and I go, they saw dreams and reality as blurred together. Sort of they moved into one thing versus another, and they did not draw such clear, distinct boundaries between dreaming and reality. So when someone says, hey, you just dreamt it, go, well, actually, every single major scientific discovery or phase of science and history and technology has come through people who have dreams of encounters that lead them to creative expressions or discoveries and things like that. I can point to historic examples and stuff like that, but really it's showing there's a more complex thing than we're doing with dreams. It's not just dreams, even if it is just dreams, is sort of how I respond.
This started for you when you were a child, right?
Yes. Yeah. I had a series of, it's driven me to make sense of it. These experiences, they're so powerful. They've driven me to make sense of it. I'm in my 40s now. I've spent way too much time and money on education trying to make sense of it. And I go, what happened? How was that possible? What is this thing that happened? And so looking back, I don't have as clear memories as I had obviously as a child. But as a child, there's a couple events like a visitation experience that I understood as the Easter Bunny visiting me in that time. I was about 3 or 4 years old, and I looked out of the window from my bed during a bedroom. I was sleeping. I was about to sleep. I was looking down. I would say I likely was sleeping, but the experience was hyper real. I felt real as if I was there. I mean, you can't tell the difference except for the fact of a being made of like a density of light came from the driveway down to the door, and I saw it approach, and it sort of contacted me in my mind, and we sort of worked together to come to an understanding it was the Easter Bunny. And it gave me a strong mental impression that's what it was. So much so that I woke up the next day and told my mom, my brother, I saw the Easter Bunny. Ha 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 ha. That's so funny, right? Like they humored me, but my memory of it was seeing something that seemed like a light thing. My wife later had an experience 30 years later, like 5 years ago, right? Like she's my same age, but she had an experience of what she called densities of light, these sort of things coming to her in dreams and telling her things. And I go, that's the same. It's like, that's the same kind of feeling I had when I was a kid. And so I've sort of connected to the notion that there are these other entities, these light beings or orbs or plasmas or whatever that can come to us and take on appearances. Some people might call them angels or aliens. Some people might call them others or visitors. I don't know. And I know that the dreaming mind is somewhat associated with those experiences in my case, and that's what drives me forward.
You said that you're still having contact today.
Yes, that's correct. In the same way as I had, but only with an understanding as to what it is. So when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I had these experiences that overwhelmed me. And I used the Christianity I grew up with to make sense of it. I thought it was demons. I thought it was demons attacking me. And so I pushed it all away. And I was like, I'm never going to do this. Or then I thought it was aliens, and then I was terrified by it. But then, I'm fascinated and terrified. And I started to get into it. And I realized that this type of contact, and it's not everyone's type of contact. So people talk to you about abductions and all sorts of stuff. I'm only talking about the kind of dreamlike contact I have that feels very real, that has a kind of telepathic contact experience with it, right? So I do a thing called lucid dreaming. And if you're not familiar with it, it's becoming aware of the fact you're dreaming and controlling your dream in some way. I do it a little bit differently. I call it dream incubation. So I go to bed with an intention. And sometimes I go, I want to make contact with these beings who visited me or who work with me in the hypnotic sessions I do with other people to work or explore the missing time thing. So I make that intention. I'm making contact. Please come to me in a dream. And then after that, I will go into bed. I'll have a dream. And sometimes it's extremely powerful. There's sort of like dreams you wake up from, everything's vibrating, you're sweating, heart pounding, you're like, something was here. And sometimes it's very, very just a strange dream. And I wake up from it and I feel connected. And then sometimes in the in-between state, it's almost as if I'm communicating with my mind. And so that's the type of contact I have. It manifests in ways that appear shamanistic. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. But it's like shown up on, like when I've asked for evidence, geometric body marks have shown up. They look sort of like dots in a line, and people have associated these with alien abduction, and I've tracked down records in the MUFON databases and stuff of other people going like, wow, these dream beings came to me and I found these dots in a line on my body and they seem geometric, but I can't make sense of them. I don't know what that means. And so I had that experience happen to me, and so that for me gave me a sense of evidence that something real is happening. But it also gave me a paradox or mystery going, how is this possible? What happened? did an alien come here and leave them on my body, punctured me with a needle, or was it something like stigmata? I think it's something more like stigmata, where there's a really deep kind of almost religious fervor, and the body responds to it. And so I think there's, like I said, there's a complex thing happening with a light being that came to me when I was 3, complex things happening with a dream contact I'm experiencing now. So some people might hear this and go, he's not talking to aliens. And some people go, wow, that's interesting.
What is stigmata?
Stigmata is the appearance of the wounds of Christ on people who are like saints. So the first case of this actually is like Saint Francis of Assisi had a sort of vision of an angel, a seraphim, and it shot him with kind of light, and he had sort of wounds start to come out of his hands, side, and feet, generally as associated with it, and it's sort of a bleeding miracle. Is revered as a miracle in some traditions. And then some people have observed that the wounds of people who experience stigmata happen in the palm versus the wrist, where Christ would have been crucified. So they realize that it is a sort of a spiritual, psycho-spiritual kind of, someone's praying to an image of Christ on the cross with the nails in their hand. And so the body or the spirit is receiving that experience and expressing that in a kind of weird or miraculous way.
I recently had a guest that was showing me pictures of his scoop marks as well as those little dots. I don't feel like that relates to Christ, because with that guest or any other guest I've seen, they're not really in the places where Christ was crucified.
Yes, exactly. So the scoop marks actually are really fascinating to me. I don't have an understanding of those. There's this type of red dot that appears in a triangle, in lines. There's certain that kind of thing. It looks like a puncture wound or a burn a little bit. The reason why I connect it to stigmata is stigmata demonstrates that people can have an image of something and that their body will respond to it, even if that image is not the true image of Christ. So if they really truly got the wounds of Christ, they would likely have them on the wrist, but they were looking at an image of Christ that falsely represented where the nails were, which is very and so that's how they responded. So it shows that if someone has such significant religious fervor or something, their body can respond. And I think that it sort of ties it into the placebo effect and things like that. I don't like that term because it feels skeptical or debunking, but ultimately it's demonstrating the power of the mind over the body to manifest some type of reality, let's say. Yeah.
Are you saying that those dots would be a sort of psychosomatic reaction? And what I mean by that is it's created by the mind.
Yes and no. I mean, so it'll always get complicated, and this is the blurry line between dreams and reality. I go, yes, it's psychosomatic. Just like that light being who visited me when I was 3 was like, let me appear as the Easter bunny. So that's a reaction that's sort of coming out of my mind, but I co-created it with the thing out there. And so in the same way, these marks, I think, appear in this way because we're co-creating it. I have a sort of inclination towards geometry or a tendency towards it. And so my mind goes, okay, that makes sense for me to express in that way. Other people might express differently. And so even if it is psychosomatic in some level, there may be some real cause for it out there in the world. And that might relate to any number of physical things. I don't actually know at this point. So I'm relating my experience. Yeah.
If you want to have contact in your dreams, do you say it out loud? I want to have contact tonight. Please visit me. Or do you just think it before you go to sleep?
So you can just think it. There's a couple of tips I would say. So if anyone's listening here, and you're curious about doing this or wanting to do this, take some time to think about the intention as to why you want to make contact. And then say some words going like, may this be of benefit to me and my community. May this occur according to the principle of non-harm. or anything that's meaningful to you to set some guide rails onto the experience. Now, working with dreams in contact is a really, again, a tricky thing because personal imagination comes up. The normal sort of nocturnal dreams can mimic these contact experiences, and something very deep could happen and you don't even know it because you've forgotten it. So there's a lot of interpretation that needs to happen. Personally, I will do something real and significant with my body if I really want to make contact. I'll write down an intention. I'll speak it out loud. I'll do a ritual. I'll write it down and burn the piece of paper. Anything that's so meaningful to you. It doesn't matter what you really do. My go-to, to be honest, is to take my dream journal and write out this intention by hand, look at it, say it, and then go to bed.
So what do you think the intentions of the ETs are, and why are they visiting you?
I believe that the visitations are from other beings than what we might call ET. So we use the term sometimes extra-dimensional or angelic. Like I said, there's a whole range of ways that these things appear. I believe there's a component that is a natural, physical, autonomous component out in the world that's sort of like people are connecting ideas of plasma orbs with ETs and things like that. I believe something like that is happening. But ultimately, I see that in the dream space, everyone is surrounded by guides and allies, ancestors, spirits in a variety of ways. And so I see these extraterrestrial spirits coming through the dream realm to make contact. And it's generally to be of benefit to the individual dreamer and their community. So when I've expressed my intention to be of benefit to me, my family, and my community, according to the principle of non-harm, they respond. They show up. They go, I heard you want to help. Let's get on it. And then that's when they started giving me the body marks that compelled me to understand geometry. That's when the interesting things happen. Sometimes that tricks me into understand, like I go, whoa, there's amazing things, synchronicities that happen around that in the waking world that really point to a sense that there is a response from the world when I line up to the motivation to be of benefit to myself, the community I'm around, and the world in general.
Those plasma orbs that you spoke of, what do you think they are?
Yeah, I turn to, I think there's a naturally existing plasma like everyone talks about. I believe they are, so I won't speak scientifically, let's say, but I will just point to some understandings I have from reading about dreams, right? So there's reports of people using dream states to go out of body, right? So out of body experience, use dream states, go out. You can maybe get some information out there, see something happening, come back, do something. Now, if you set up a strong intention, you could go and visit a friend perhaps in that state. And if you really focus on it, and that's what some of the books say, that like appearance would show up, right? And so sometimes I think there's this naturally occurring phenomena of these plasmas, things that might express something like ball lightning or something like that, is sort of the plasma that's the soul of the sun. Sort of, I'm speaking metaphorically here, poetically, to kind of try to bring it in. I think it's the visitor I had when I was 3 that appeared to me as the Easter Bunny. I think it's one of these things. And I think they are physical vehicles for the projection of consciousness. So that's why, for me, it seems tricky to understand, because if we look at a number of different UFO cases, some people go, oh, these are aliens, these are angels, these are spirit orbs. And I think they could be all of them using the physical vehicle of a plasma that is sort of naturally occurring.
I believe what you're saying is that these non-human entities can use the plasma that is available in the universe or on the planet, in the ethers, and they can coalesce it and use it as a symbol for them.
Yes, I firmly believe that's the case, but I also firmly believe they do not need a physical vehicle. And the reason why I say that is because the cases, if you look into some cases about these orbs, they resolve into prosaic things like satellites or planes. They just do. Yet, this is the mystery that I'm exploring. And yet, surrounding those visitations of planes and satellites perceived as plasma orbs, there's a huge constellation of events, synchronicities, meaningful dreams, kind of mysterious things happening that make me think that there is contact happening at a non-physical level, and that our physical minds just sort of need something to hang on to. So we go, oh, it's the plasma orbs. And so they're tricky. So sometimes they actually do show up as plasma orbs. They do radiate. That's where we get some of the body mark things actually seem like radiation. Some of the marks on the ground actually seem like that. But most of the time, unless there's evidence that brings it really close, I've found that when I really deeply explore, the actual contact is happening in a dream or telepathic realm as opposed to the physical realm through the thing that was filmed, if you know what I mean.
Let's say you're at a CE5 event and you are there with your friends and you start seeing a plasma orb. Is it possible that an NHI is standing among you, and not literally standing, but with the group of you on the ground, and is somehow creating this plasma light show for you up in the air?
Yes. I mean, I firmly believe that there is some level of I mean, like, they know where you are, they know what's going on, they can see. It's very non-local. So the reason why I say it so confidently is I work with people who have experienced CE5. I've worked with people who have these encounters, and some of the time they want to use dream work or hypnosis to explore them. And so I've had the privilege of going into hundreds of experiences where I've developed confidence that when especially the CE5 stuff, right? Especially if the manifestation of someone reaching out, you're reached back. It's really a beautiful thing. But they show up in the sessions or around the sessions because they want more information to come out. They want some transformation to happen with the experiencer. And so that tells me they've been watching you from the CE5. And the first time you heard about CE5, they've been watching you. They set up, they act outside of time and space. So they've set up potent moments for you and everyone involved. So yeah, they're standing there with you. They're up there, that sort of thing. It's very, I'm more impressed by the capacities they have the longer I work in this field.
Do you feel that contact is increasing, or we just have the ability to film it now with the cameras and talk about it more because of the internet?
That's a really good question. I think it's been universal. I think you could have sort of universal, and throughout history, the quality changes. So like I talked about with the sense of the other coming to me and we agreeing it's an Easter bunny instead of an angel or an alien, right? These others are real, we're real, the interactions are real, and yet how we're relating to them is different based on our level of development or age. As a species, we're developing and we've passed a number of points of maturation, especially with the internet, especially with this. And it's so inspiring to actually see something around the world being filmed, going, this is something real. Let's be inspired by it. That kind of thing is happening with the internet. And so with that inspiration, there's more looking into these things. Now, I know dreams respond to the attention you give them. So a lot of people say, oh, you work with dreams. I don't remember my dreams. I haven't remembered them in 5 years. I don't even think I dream anymore. And I go, well, what do you believe about dreams? Do you think they're meaningful or meaningless? And most people go like, it doesn't really matter. I'm just processing like whatever happened during the day. I don't need to remember. And I go, well, that's actually one of the issues. Like, if you don't know, dreams are actually a source of creativity, innovation, and cultural renaissance, right? Like, that's where a lot of stuff comes from, then you won't care about dreams, you won't remember them. And the same thing goes with looking up at the sky or looking out for these beings. If you don't know, you won't do it. And so I'm really hopeful and excited about the internet bringing more awareness to these things.
What is the end game with all this contact, and where are we going?
Yeah, I mean, if I have to look to the end, I'd look to the beginning. And so I always go back to the sense of benefit to ourselves and to others in our community. So if I had to guess, most of the contact we're seeing that is within this domain of like dreamlike, that sort of in dreamlike narratives that relate with consciousness, right? The end game for those are to work with the experiencer, to be a sort of bridge to whatever realm the ETs or aliens or whatever are from, or to be that bridge. And that's to bring forward knowledge or understanding, transformation, miraculous events relating to the body that brings wholeness. That's what people talk about. And so that's the end game I would see for individual contact. Now, sometimes if you get stopped along the way in the process, it looks really terrifying. Like if I stopped my process with exploring nightmares when I was scared and convinced of shadow demons eating my soul or whatever, I would not have this understanding. So I see that we as a society need to keep going and keep working with it. And just as some things happen for the individual, right, we're doing something as a collective now. And so the end game I would deduce is a kind of community of humanity and the non-humans to actually bring about a sense of wholeness and collaboration in harmony with each other in the earth. That's my guess.
I know we're speculating, but what percentage do you think of these beings that are making contact are something other than human? And what percentage could be just dead humans out there trying to make contact?
That's a really good question. Ultimately the answer is what is a human, right? So when I resolve it down, when I think about it and I go all the way back as fundamental as I get, I come to an awareness of universal awareness, universal consciousness. We're all swimming in the mind of God, goddess, universe, whatever you call it. And so in that way, asking, is it human or non-human? We go, actually, we're all the same. It's all the same if you go down deep enough. Now, at some level, I would say that more often than not, it's a wide world out there. It's not just dead humans. It's not just aliens. It's nature, spirits. There's all sorts of stuff coming through. And so I would say a large percentage of the things we think are alien are actually some other combination of exotic thing that is just as mysterious and wonderful as aliens. The thing I'm looking into is like what percent of contact that I had comes directly from me doing things in the future, like the dream work or any sort of consciousness activity that can send things back in time to myself. That's the question that I'm looking at now, and I couldn't guess. I would say maybe half of it.
You have a book called Galathog the Gray, Field Guide to Anomalous Geometry. Who is Galathog the Gray?
Right. So Galathog the Gray, Galathog the Gray is a dream guide, let's say. I am still not sure who and what exactly it is. If it were up to me, I would understand it to be a dream guide. Like you go to bed, there's a figure that comes to you, it's wise, it teaches you. People would understand that to be something like a spirit guide or a teacher or an archetype, if you psychologize it, something that exists within my mind. But when I ask it the question, are you that or are you something else? It always goes, I'm something else. I have a physical body like you would expect, like the images I give you, which are that of a tall gray, right? So it's very clear. I don't believe that. I go, this is a tricky claim. It's it's claimed responsibility for a lot of the body mark phenomena I had. And so just briefly, I had a series of dreams around a summer solstice. Well, after I finished my book, Missing Time, and they gave me this body mark, and I had dreams that corresponded with it. And I couldn't make sense of the body mark, the geometry of it, until 6 months later. I had another series of dreams that said, hey, we heard you wanted to be a benefit to the world. Work with us, do exactly what we say. And so for the next like 19 days, I had dreams that were about geometry. I had geometric dreams. They taught me how to do geometry. And then in my waking life, I would get these prompts to learn ruler and compass geometry, sacred geometry. And then I was able to understand or describe the geometric nature of that body mark I received, which would be the first step to decoding a message. And so the character Galathog is an other who is working with me in contact to bring forward whatever that is. Galathog is actually not a name from, it's this sort of nickname I have, and that comes from, that's an angel name. Is the name of an angel that was described in the 1600s by an English magician named John Dee and his scryer Edward Kelly. And so there's, it's sort of a kind of a nod to them is how I call that. It's the source of an inspiration of a book about these things. And that's one of the primary sources of contact dreams I have.
What was the message that you decoded?
It's pretty wild. I actually think there's a fractal efficiency in their communication. So the decoded message, there's a message in there that's still to be decoded. For me personally, it was how to relate to the extraordinary evidence of body marks associated with alien abduction. That for me was the message. That's the thing I needed to understand in my inquiry, and it gave me a direct answer as to how to do that. Now, that's a very complex answer. I'm happy to spend another 5 hours talking about it. I wrote the book kind of explains that, but ultimately it comes to this really beautiful mandala. A mandala is a circular design, and so even within the first body mark I experienced, and I experienced 4, and I identified dozens of other cases of this sort of stuff, it basically used geometry that referred to rational ways of thinking and irrational ways of thinking. And so when I drew the geometry around the body marks, I would find a beautiful balance and symmetry between what's called bisection, so that's dividing a line in half, and creating the golden section, which is the golden ratio, dividing the line a little bit more than half with a different proportion. In those two ways of working with magnitude form kind of a strategy about how to relate to things, and that's the irrational and rational ways of thinking. So it says to me, I need to really balance dreams and waking, dreams and reality, rationality, irrationality, magical thinking, and mundane thinking. And so that actually was the message for me personally.
How can the experience of the phenomena be both dreamlike and real?
People often will ask the question, if it's a dream, is it not real or whatever? And so we talked a little bit about how other cultures blur the line between reality and dreaming. So the thing I looked to, and it comes from the missing time experience. So people who reported UFO abduction would often say, I can't remember a period of time, but I saw UFO and I have a mark on my body and I know an alien was involved. They'll talk to a hypnotist and then they'll get some understanding about it. So they'll say that's real. They'll go, this was a real thing that happened. And so I'm pointing out the fact that actually it's real and dreamlike. And it's dreamlike in the ways we know about it. And it's dreamlike in the ways we remember it. And that was one of the major insights I had when I first started to approach hypnosis, was seeing the fact that I don't remember a lot of my dreams. I have dreams that involve powerful entities that communicate things like prophecies to me, right? That gives me galactic tours. I have those experiences, but I don't remember them well sometimes. And so I got to thinking, well, I can improve how I remember my dreams out of learning about dreams, keeping a habit of a dream journal, doing that dream incubation stuff. I can actually get very good at remembering my dreams. So, would it be possible to use the same techniques to remember my contact experiences more? And the answer is yes, actually, yes. And I think there's like a true relationship. If you do the things that help you remember your dreams, if you are an experiencer of missing time, you'll experience it sort of differently or have a different relationship with the memory.
Let's say a person says he was walking home from the park at midnight and then he has missing time and, and then he has marks on his body. And as he starts to remember the experience, it appears to be dreamlike. Is it dreamlike because the aliens put us in a mental state that makes it feel dreamlike?
That's a wonderful question. I mean, this is the thing that gets to me is so either the aliens have the capacity and understanding of human physiology to simulate our ways of being in sleep and dream. So that's the sleep paralysis experience, right? They describe things that are almost exactly like what happens in natural sleep paralysis. So it's either a very, very like they're either very, very good at that at some level of inducing these states. And then the question for me is if it is a technological thing, right? If they technologically inducing a dreamlike state so we don't remember it, how are they doing it and why are they doing it is the question for me. I I remember thinking a lot about this, and either way, it ultimately it's if we're dealing with time traveling entities that have the capacity to control dream states, right? At some point, it's like I was actually reading through old literature about shamanism, right? People like describing the skills of a shaman, which is to induce a dream state in another person and control it and to relate to entities and things like that and to embody animals. That was the thing that got me was like there's lore that shaman can embody animals and to generate dreamscapes. So in the case of the like someone walking at home missing time, body marks, whatever, oftentimes there's a like a large owl or a deer with beautiful eyes or something like that that's at the boundary of that experience. That was the case for me in my missing time experience. So that sense of having the animal there is like animal embodiment of a shaman. And so for me, I ended up thinking there's really no difference between time traveling psychic aliens who can control my dream state and ancient dream shaman who can also embody animals and control dream states. Now, I've not experienced the ancient shaman thing, and I've not experienced necessarily the direct, like, physicalized encounter, except for what I sort of stuff I've described to you with the Easter Bunny. So I don't really know.
Is it possible that the memories people have from dreams and or hypnosis could be false memories?
Yes. So this is the thing that I'm thinking. I spend a lot of time thinking about and researching that we know from controversial studies, right? So in the 1990s, the false memory thing came out. People were talking about alien abduction, recovered memories of childhood trauma, and it gets controversial because it relates to identity. Are you a victim of abuse or are you making it up? Like that's a really challenging thing to talk about. The controversy and the controversial thing I would say is that the dreams and the hypnosis memories do seem to be an easy way to induce false memories, to cause false memories. The same thing with research, right? So if an authoritative researcher, someone with like lab coat or corduroy sport coat as a professor going, let me take down some information about your experience. We know those are scenarios where the brain just creates false memories, and it's very easy to do that. And so it's really hard when you get down to it to tell the difference between a historic memory and a false memory. So that's the thing I do that's controversial and people don't necessarily like, is I point, these memories are coming through dynamics that look like false memory dynamics, right? That's the thing. I go, this is a challenge for me. The other thing I do, though, unlike any other researcher in this field, I go, there's more than false memory. Even if it is a false memory, that's meaningful because it's dreamlike in nature. So the thing I say is like, let's take a step back, stop deciding is it memory or not, and look at it like a dream. This is core. The controversy is core to this situation because it relates to UFO disclosure narratives, right? So like what's currently happening, the basis for our understanding about UFO disclosure comes from how we interpret stories people told about encounters. So saying that's actually a false memory thing is controversial. The most controversial thing I will say is relating to the work of John E. Mack. Are you familiar with his work?
Not really. I'm familiar of who he is, but I haven't read any of his work.
Yeah, I mean that's where a lot of people are, to be honest, and everyone has a really, I mean, in my circles, everyone has a really great feeling towards him, and this was the nature of the controversy or ethical quandary that pushed me out of PhD school, to be honest, as I raised these questions, and I continue to raise these questions, and I'll continue to raise these questions, is around the interpretation, especially early 90s interpretation of abduction narratives using hypnosis that look to me like the most controversial interpretation of that thing is, you can say that the whole kit and caboodle in part was contaminated by John Mack and all the other hypnotists in the early 90s by their methods. They did not use rigorous or even ethical methods of hypnosis, and that led them to inadvertently use false memory like suggestions, right? So it's now impossible to tell the difference. Were those actual abductees, or did John Mack hypnotize his people to testify to the reality of sexual sleep paralysis nightmares on Oprah so that John Mack could make a $250,000 advance? Like he had a $250,000 advance on his book. He went on Oprah. He talked about these things. He got people to testify to the reality of space aliens on Oprah, but he did so using at least two methods of known false memory inductions on people who have clear indicators they were in sleep paralysis. Now that actually looks to me like the entire, and so this is an issue because everyone in the UFO field, if you really get into it, will point to John Mack and said, this Harvard psychiatrist says it's real, and therefore we have to treat these testimonies as if they're real and not dreams. That's what ends up happening. And so it's sort of like saying this whole thing is contaminated by that activity. And that's controversial. But it doesn't hit the kind of drama controversy that I like. Most of the time people just stop talking to me when I bring that up in this community. So I'm hoping something different might happen if I talk about it again, but I don't know. Fool me once, fool me twice. I'd love to hear what you understand about that.
So you're basically saying that you read through his research and you feel like at least some of the time he was leading the witness.
100% of the time. Not only did I read through his research, I I read through Bud Hopkins' research, David Jacobs' research. I talked to other people at Harvard at the time he was there to understand where he was at. I've had a email correspondence with Will Boucher from the John E. Mack Institute. I've talked to and corresponded with a number of researchers that are supporting this sort of stuff. I've had a correspondence with Ralph Blumenthal, who wrote a biography about him. I go, where was John Mack's training and credentials in understanding these things? What was his expertise in? Is that relevant to the claims he's making that these things are real and not dreams? And I did that work, and that's in part presented in my books. And then from there, I'm raising the concern that in fact he was not educated or trained enough in hypnosis to really understand what he was doing. And so we've basically copy pasted a lot of the stuff he did into the UFO disclosure movement now without looking into it. I did what you did. I heard about him. I don't know much about him. I went to PhD school based on that. And I was like 2 years in, I was like, I actually just have to understand where the basis for these claims are, because I'm going to defend a dissertation. I have to be good at that. And I was like, there is no basis. This is a sandcastle waiting to fall, the whole thing. The beautiful thing about it is when that sandcastle falls, we'll still discover there's a reality to the encounter that is not contaminated by the hypnosis controversy. That's the thing I want to leave anyone who touches in with this on me. That's the final message, is we don't have to worry about invalidating experiences, because even if it resolves the false memory, that sense of false memory is in part evidence of trick by these non-human intelligences. So it's sort of a beautiful situation, but it's scary if we're basing our identities on interpretations of other people's experiences, let's say.
Well, it's interesting that you're still involved and you still are for this contact going on, because if you were a hardcore skeptic, you could say that this whole thing is just total nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a really rare person, because I'm not skeptical. I'm an experiencer. I went into this credulously, and then I went, oh my God, our methods and our understanding and our research, this is a big issue, but it's not. I agree with 100% with the skeptics around false memory stuff, except for the fact that we need to say a lot more. There's more to be said around it. There's a different dimension of reality coming through. And that's why I want to talk about it. And that's why I want experiencers and UFO community people to actually look at the issues of false memory so that we can move beyond it and get to where the good stuff is in contact. Yeah.
What is your criteria to differentiate the false memories from the real ones?
That is interpretation. So what ends up happening to me is if an experiencer is reporting a memory, they go, this is a memory, I'm reporting it to you. And I have a memory of an alien giving me missing time, right? If they go, oh, okay. Or they say, I had this experience, it felt odd, I'm not sure what's going on, but this is what I'm reporting to you. And there's a sort of sense of, I'm not sure what's going on. There's this really strong, at least in we see in media sometimes, or the books we talk about, there's like a definite kind of feeling like, oh, there's aliens definitely here doing these things, and that explains these experiences. Then I say that veers towards false memory. You can report the same memory, but hold it within a different context. If it's more dreamlike, if you're not trying to deduce investigations from it. Like you go, oh, here's a memory. You go, oh, okay, I could talk to your mom in that experience, or maybe find some evidence of like alien skin in the whatever, and they would corroborate, and maybe we could like find a UFO. That sort of thing, maybe or maybe not, is relevant to the actual contact that is deeply happening. And so that's the difference for me, is that a false memory can be a really true and real spiritual experience. And I've induced false memories in myself, to be honest. And it's kind of wild. It took me a while. Like I did some work around that, and I was like, oh, this is actually a false memory. And then I had to reverse that a little bit. So I'm somewhat familiar with that process.
Could you say that a false memory is synonymous with imagination?
Yes and no. It comes from the same source of imagination, but the false memory is so that this is the wild thing about the human mind. You invite someone to relax, you develop a little bit of rapport, you can give them a suggestion, and then the mind will generate a rich, immersive experience that feels like the most clear memory you want. Like anything, like we can do that. We can explore that. I've 95% of the people that work with me really have that function that really just you press the button, it happens, right? So there's this faculty of generating these rich experiences, and that happens. I'm very, very familiar with it because of my dream work, lucid dreaming, paying attention to as I go into sleep and come out. I see how this happens. So the mind and the dreaming mind does this all the time, creates very rich experiences. So what ends up happening, and I think what ended up happening with the confusion, is that people used hypnosis and this sort of it's not like imagination, like, oh, imagine a pink elephant. It's like really, really, really ultra real immersive sort of experiences. They discover that the humans do that, but they didn't have a context to understand it. So they go, oh, I'm asking for memories. It's giving me something that looks like memories. It must be memories. But actually, we're now discovering that it can give us a lot more, and that there's a greater context to it. So yes and no. False memories are imagination.
Well, how reliable is the data from hypnosis?
Very unreliable. If you're it's crazy data. I love it so much. It's so complex. There's like actual fact. Like you can use hypnosis to recover memories. Like there's a guy in the New York Police Department who writes papers on it. He does it really well or whatever. I'm not trained that way. 99% of the people who offer hypnosis for experiencers aren't trained that way. They're trained in a way of hypnosis, and this is by way of a quirk of how psychology developed. And I'd love to write a book about this because it explains how John Mack could be revered as such an expert, but not know anything about this sort of stuff we're talking about, even though the next door neighbor in Harvard's office building knew everything about this. They never talked. And so there's these quirks of the history of psychology that cause this weird thing to happen. So with the hypnosis data, right, like people get past life information and they validate it. They get a lot of stuff. You can likely, there's so much you can do with it. But if you naively assume that hypnosis equals memory retrieval, you will be tricked so many times, and it's not the case. It's not the case. And so I feel like for me, it's like a dream. I have to interpret it like a dream because dreams can bring back memories. You go, I haven't thought about that in years, and it brings back a memory. But the dream might be like you're standing naked in front of a lecture hall, and then you go, oh, I forgot. I love going to that lecture hall, and that memory comes back, right? The memory isn't being naked in the lecture hall. It's connected to that thematically, symbolically, or whatever. And so it's very unreliable data if you don't know how to interpret hypnosis trance. It's very reliable if you understand it as something like a dream or a trance.
Have you looked into Dolores Cannon's work? And if so, what is your opinion on it?
I love Dolores Cannon's work. I believe that she did something really, she stepped outside of this need of hypnosis equaling memory. She was the first person, I think, to really be so prominent, to have stepped beyond the bounds of this kind of materialistic need for these trance things to be memory. And so she went into the realm of, she called it, I think, spirit. I think she used the word spirituality in there. But she was willing to go wherever it led. And so I really, really appreciate that. And I really appreciate the legacy she has, the QHHT technique. All those people are doing, I think, really wonderful work. I've been trained in the BQH method of her thing, and that was put forward by one of her main students, Candace Craw Goldman. So I'm pretty well versed with that experience. Um, and I think it's not necessarily a historic fact. Like we're not necessarily bringing forward his history, like but as a spiritual metaphor, it is real and potent and powerful. And by the way, an ethical approach to studying dreams or working with dreams is never to leave it with one interpretation. You always leave the door open for many interpretations over time. And so that's what I'm doing here with a lot of this work. And yeah, Dolores Cannon is great.
If someone wants to make contact, how do they do it?
Yeah, like I said, it's sort of like for me, I would recommend coming up with the intention to be of benefit to the self, to the family, to the community, to the earth, according to the principle of non-harm, to work towards it. Then you actually have to have a practice of doing it. So sometimes you ask the question, can I think about it or not? The contact really feels powerful when there's powerful emotions, powerful experiences, a lot of energy in the situation. So, for example, I hear that Stephen Greer sometimes puts out what's called a puja table during his CE5 invocations, and that's a little table with an offering. And puja is sort of a Hindu concept, and he is very influenced by that. So, for people in the West who would prefer a kind of Western understanding, they might make offerings to the fae, the fairies, to the nature spirits. Kind of, I do that instead of doing a Hindu puja table. So there's things you do. You do an action in this world to invoke the presence, and then you observe what happens like an oracle. So you're looking out for omens like you do in the CE5 experience. You do the meditation, you do the invocation, you look out and you go, that satellite doesn't look like a satellite. You're starting to interpret these things. This is we've understood this as humans, right? This is the sort of finding meaning in the movement of birds. That's the divination style, or casting runes, looking into that for evidence of the unseen world acting in. And so with the understanding I would offer is that the CE5 and the UFO and the alien is just one flavor of a type of universally human way of inviting contact. And so it doesn't actually matter what you do. You could do the CE5 app. You could do another app or whatever. like you could say this, you could say a magic spell. Is your emotions and energies aligned with your belief and understanding, aligned with positive intention for the world, that aligns with those who can actually make contact with you? So there's it's again a complex formula.
Are all the entities that are out there that people can make contact with benevolent, or are there some tricksters?
There's definitely tricksters. Definitely tricksters. I answer this question by way of my experience with dreams again. So just like in dreams, you can have nightmares and really powerful good experiences. You wouldn't say the nightmare monsters are bad. You wouldn't say the good experiences are particularly even like benevolent, right? They are an expression of the whole system. And that when we work with both the nightmare aspect and the positive aspect of dreams, we come to a deeper understanding of our own wholeness and our relation to the cosmos. And so in this way, I mean, I have direct experience of going in my nightmares, having things happen, and then going, I'm lucid. I have to go toward that monster to resolve this and resolve this in a way that's lucid. So I have that experience. And I think a lot of the time with the trickster, malevolent type experiences, if we were to treat them like a nightmare, as opposed to something out there doing it to us, meaning that we have some responsibility for the co-creation of that experience, then we would find insight, and understanding and wholeness, and then we would have a choice as to whether or not to interact with those beings. It does seem like there are malevolent forces out there. And that is the reason why I have always suggested grounding any contact in both understanding and intention aligned to being a benefit according to the principle of non-harm.
Let's say you are going to write another dissertation. What is the end goal of all your research? What are you trying to prove or disprove?
That's a good question. Yeah. The thing I wanted to do recently was to understand my own. So I started doing this work in 2020 to, in part, understand my own contact experiences, and in part to make manifest, to change the world a little bit. I did not like how UFO and ET encounters were reduced to false memory and sleep paralysis. And I didn't like how those sort of things were cast aside. Sleep paralysis, hallucinations, false memories. Those are actually false names for a real powerful phenomenon. Sleep paralysis hallucinations are not hallucinations. They are not unreal. They connect us to a deeply real, connected world of powerful beings. And same thing with the false memories. It's a powerful experience, just sort of misapplied. In mainstream science, mainstream world will not even touch this stuff because the like alien abduction has been so funny to them. They know for a fact false memories happen. So they don't actually see what's possible, and experiencers live it, but that's communication. So the thing I wanted to do was to bridge that, to go, the methods that we used in the 90s to understand abduction produced false memories. They are not bad memories. They are not bad methods, but our interpretation of them and our insistence that they have to be historic memories is doing us a disservice. If we expand our understanding about what false memory is, hypnagogic hallucination, all these things are, we'll get to a much more real, grounded understanding of these things, where we can do science with them. We can do work with them. And so that's the goal I had. I'm not sure what the next goal for me is. I think it is specifically to leverage the paranormal aspects of these encounters. Like there's actually a collaboration between humans and these non-humans, as we've been calling them, that wants to happen, and it needs humans to talk to each other in clear ways. And so my hope would be to clarify the language we use as skeptics and as believers together.
Do you use a dream journal on a nightly basis?
Oftentimes I do. Sometimes I go on breaks. It's exhausting to keep a dream journal all the time. If you get into it, you end up writing like 4 pages, 5 pages, 6 pages a night or whatever. You just have to cut out some dreams. That was my experience. Sometimes I just don't want to do that. So I go in and out of it. I use dream journals as a sort of really strong practice for contact. And I have been, yeah. I mean, I keep one by my bed. I make sure it's all set up. I got my light there. I got my pen. I know exactly. I even visualize what happens when I wake up. What do I have to do to move as minimally as possible to start writing it down so I can stay connected to the dream? And it's so easy to like wake up and go, I don't need to remember that. I don't need to record this. So I practice even that now. And then I also have another journal that I write my interpretations of that dream journal in, and any trance hypnosis. Excuse me. The other journal holds my interpretations of the first dream journal. I write about that in there, and I go in trance experiences as well. So right now I'm doing a lot of journaling. At times I haven't.
As a researcher, do you find that there is true value from the dream journal?
Yes. I mean, as a researcher, the dream journal is one of the only ways we know about internal experiences. Oftentimes as a researcher, people have been collecting dreams in systematic ways. I mean, I would say since the 50s, that have been like really machine readable kind of things that are really statistically based. So they're very useful in terms of that. We have correlations between types of dreams and human states. Like, are you in REM? If there's different types correlating there. So it's very rich. My own experience is I carry these things around. Sometimes I open them up. I'm always fascinated by my past dreams. I think the next thing we'll actually discover in the realm of dreaming is precognition. So that's dreaming the future. We'll understand how that works. It's not what we expect. It's sort of like is like reverse memory. So it's kind of stuck within our personal system most of the time. But that only comes out if you keep a dream journal and in a day journal most of the time.
Most of my dreams, I feel like, are sorting out the day's events or some kind of psychobabble or something. But occasionally I'll have really profound and realistic dreams that seem more meaningful. Does that make sense to you, that there are different types of dreams? And if so, why? Or what's happening?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense to me. There are many different types of dreams. A lot of them are terrifying and horrible. Like, well, bad experiences, like nightmares, right? Is like its own category. And the dream shamanism. So I talk about dream shamanism, and that's basically humans' understanding about dreams outside of a materialist Western culture. Western people have shamanic practices, but they've generally don't work well within materialist cultures. So the dream shamanic cultures always acknowledge there are a variety of dreams. So some people call them big dreams or little dreams. So sometimes they are just, there's so many, there's about, I mean, scientists suggest there are at least a dozen different reasons why we dream. So sometimes it's simulation of events to help us learn. Sometimes it's processing. Sometimes it's this or that. So the skill that one needs to apply is interpretation. And that's what, like I said, with the shamans, they do animal embodiment, they do control of dream states, they do interpretation of dream states. That's one of their core skills. And so just why, I mean, there's a variety of reasons why. I kind of understand that when people report these dreams, powerful dreams, dreams that bring them to inquiries about near death and UFOs, in your case, there's a kind of responsibility or an invitation there from the other side to bridge what is there in the other side to here in this world. And the dreams and those powerful dreams are an invitation to walk that bridge.
How do you define consciousness and how it relates to the body?
Yeah, definition of consciousness. I believe everything's conscious. I believe everything is made out of consciousness. And I believe that the fundamental reality is a sort of unified consciousness, something like the mind of God, or goddess or universe. And I believe that it is sort of like the different levels of reality are just as we go into different levels of dreaming. And so I believe there's that this whole world, that our body is sort of dreamt at a different level. And so in that way, we have a whole internally consistent world where the body is the real thing. You move the body and you can hurt your body and then you die or whatever, and it's no longer be. That's the truth at one level, but at a different level, it's really just a dream reality. And so that's how I define it. I think of the body, to be honest, as something like an antenna. Obviously, if you introduce things like substances in the body, the mind's experience is different. If I dream in different places on the earth, I have different types of dreams. And so that tells me there's something fundamental about the body as well to consciousness.
Quite often, near-death experiencers will say that the other side is more real than here, and this is the dream.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
Just as in a dream, we are convinced oftentimes of it's reality. So oftentimes, and this, I pay attention to this a lot too. People talk about lucid dream signs. So these are things like flying through a wall, or like letters not adding up, or dead people talking to you, or aliens sort of thing. And you'll be in those dream states and you'll not even think, oh, wow, it's so weird. I went through a wall to talk to a space alien. It just is the case, right? And then you wake up from it and you go, of course that was a dream. So with this, with the experience of being here is sort of dreamlike in that way. If we talk to the people like the near-death experiencers or the saints and the mystics, they go, there's something else there. Just like in lucid dreaming, right? If you practice enough, you can become aware of the fact you're dreaming, and you can sense in to your sleeping body while you are dreaming. And that's one of the more wild experiences you can have, is just being immersed in a dream, but simultaneously knowing your body is sort of in paralysis, kind of warm in bed, that kind of thing. And so with the other side being dreamlike, I mean, we can talk about it all you want, but ultimately the invitation is to generate awareness oneself and to reach into whatever is the sleeping body that's producing the dream of this world. And that's what you get to oftentimes when you do the CE5s, or you dive deep into the missing time experience, as you get a lived experience of that reality. I don't know how to explain it. I'm just telling you my experience.
If people want to take a deep dive into more about what you're up to, what is your website?
That's dseti.org. That stands for the Dream Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, dseti.org. You can get all of my books, all of my writing, learn about my services. I have posts about the geometries I look into, so you can really find your way there. I also have a YouTube channel where I talk about all of these things. So if you like YouTube, you can find me there at dseti.
Before we finish up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the positive message is that, so if you look at the history of contact, I've looked at the history of contact by way of dreams and things like that. And even though dreams have this nightmarish quality that is confusing, so we are in sort of a nightmare experience with whatever's happening in this world. The entities that come, even if they're monsters, if you turn to them with a lucid awareness, they oftentimes transform into sources of wisdom or inspiration, innovation, creativity. Now, in the past, humans have done this, and things like the periodic table, the sewing machine, Google, philosophies, Western, like inventions come out of it. So I've oftentimes talked as kind of a skeptical thing, going like, maybe there's not physical aliens in the way that you hope, or the technology. Maybe we can't get free energy tech from finding or recovered crashes or whatever. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in this view, because actually the dreams and the contact we have through them historically have been shown to reveal new technologies. And the fact that we're moving into this internet age means that we're dreaming as a species in a different. And so for me, I'm very hopeful that technologies and creativity, even free energy and teleportation stuff and control of dream states through technology, could come forward through this interaction that we seem to be having with very real things in this dreamlike way.
Daniel, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.